Logistics outsourcing. How long does it take to go through the process? It's a very common question that I get, and that's the one that I'm going to be answering this week, coming right up. So if you've never been involved in logistics outsourcing, and let's use that term to encompass outsourcing warehousing or transport or both, if you've never been involved in it, you might be wondering, how long does it take to go through the process? And I'll tell you for a start, probably longer than you think. And it's a bit of a mistake that people make. They try to go through that process too quickly. Now, I will tell you what I think is a realistic time frame, but first I'm going to go through why it's important to allow enough time. How do I know that? Well, you probably know my day job is running a consulting company called Logistics Bureau. I think at the last count we had helped clients through the outsourcing process about 226 times. So we've kind of got the process down pretty well. So some of the things I want you to think about in the process. So you might be thinking, oh look, we can do this in 6 weeks or something. Here's some of the things you've got to fit in during that sort of process, from deciding you're going to go outsource to actually selecting your partners. So we've got to come up with a short list. Who are we going to talk to? We're not going to go out and invite everybody to bid for this work. You've got to put together a data specification. You've got to put together a service specification so that they know exactly the service levels that you're going to be looking for. You might want to be putting a draft contract with your request for proposal or request for tender. You might be putting in there how you're going to manage the contract, KPIs and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff going into the documentation. And if you want some more detail on that, there's a whole bunch more videos on the topic on the channel. So just use the search feature to find those. So we're going to put together all this documentation. We're going to agree as a group who we want to invite to participate, and then we're going to send this documentation out. We've got to allow some time for that to be circulated, for companies to say, yes, we're interested, no, we're not. But then, and this is where people very often cut it too short, we've got to allow them time to put together their bids, their proposals, their quotations, whatever term you want to use. That can take quite a long time depending on the type of contract. So I was going to say warehousing probably takes longer than transport, but we've done some recently which was with some very heavy transport fleets which were very specialised, and that takes time. So you've got to allow time for your potential suppliers to put their bids together. What's realistic? Depending on the complexity, a very simple warehousing or transport one, maybe give them 3 or 4 weeks. Something more complicated, you're going to have to give them much longer. So there's a 3 or 4 week chunk that goes right into the middle of the whole process. Once you then getting your responses back from all of these potential suppliers, you've got to go through all their bids, you've got to evaluate them. We always do that with a cross-functional team, very objective process. You've then got to go through the whole selection process, evaluating, selecting who you want to work with. There might be a period then where you're going to negotiate the costs of the contract, and then finally you're going to make a selection, and then you can start planning the implementation. So the time frame that we're talking about is from saying, okay, let's start the outsourcing process and go into the market, to the point where we're actually going to pick the company that we want to work with. That period, I would say as a minimum, and I'd love to hear your comments down below, is going to be 10 to 12 weeks. 10 to 12 weeks. It can be much longer. So what are some of the things that can make that a much longer period? The geography, of course. Maybe it's not just in the local area, maybe it's a national contract involving lots of facilities, maybe it's an international contract, all of that's going to extend it. What about the complexity? What are the products being handled? Are they multi-temperature? Do they require secure storage, special handling? All of that's going to extend the time frame. The one that I mentioned with a heavy vehicle fleet, the company was going to have to basically get the trucks built to run the contract. So, that's more the implementation period, but again, a degree of complexity. So there's many, many things that can blow that time out. So I really just want you to go away from this video thinking, 10 to 12 weeks is probably a reasonable time frame if there's nothing complicated about it. So interestingly enough, I said at the beginning of this video that most people underestimate the time. I've had 3 companies contact me in the last week to assist them with the outsourcing process, and we talk through how we're going to support them and how we're going to do it. And then I come to the crunch question. What's the time frame that you've got to do this in? And I have to say, I'm used to hearing 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, maybe. And you're kind of thinking, okay, this is going to be a little bit tricky. In all 3 cases, they were thinking about this more than 12 months ahead. So the message is getting out there. Well done to those 3 companies that I spoke to in the last week or so. And in fact, one lady I was speaking to today said, oh, look, our contract's going to expire, back end of next year. We're a little bit worried about the time frame. And I said, no, that's great. You've got over 12 months. You're really thinking ahead. Of course, the period that I've spoken about, 10 to 12 weeks, is just getting to selection. So depending on the type of contract that you're outsourcing, let's say it's warehousing, if it's going to be a new build warehouse, yeah, you're going to need potentially 12 months before it's built and implemented. With the specialist transport fleet I was talking about, it's probably going to take more than 12 months to get these vehicles built and get that contract implemented. So from start to selection, 10 to 12 weeks. Implementation for something simple, it might be 3 months, switching over warehousing contracts or transport contracts. For anything more complicated, you could be going a year or so out. So how long does it take to go through the outsourcing process? Think an absolute minimum of 10 to 12 weeks for something simple. So thanks for watching. Love to hear your comments down below about your experiences in outsourcing. And of course, if you're watching this and you want some help with your outsourcing, do feel free to contact me. My contact details are in the description below the video. Thanks for watching. See you next week.